Welcome to another episode of the Sage Holistic Show. My name is Emily Sellis and I am your host. Today we have an episode for you on internal family systems. One of our holistic healers of Orange County, Jodie Shea, owner of Pillow Talk Therapy and licensed marriage and family therapist, goes deep into this dive, learning about the different parts of ourselves. Have a listen.
Sage is a 501c3 nonprofit organization building community by providing education and counseling about physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. We encourage all of our listeners to find their own path to what holistic wellness means to you.
Okay. So like she said, my name is Jodie Shea. I am a licensed marriage family therapist. I mainly advertise for couples and sex therapy, but this lovely little pearl right here, IFS, presented itself to me when I was in grad school. Just one of those ways that just life just seemed to work out. Because I'm originally from Connecticut and it just, I wanted to be out here, but it just happened. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to try to sneak in a little bit of experiential just because that's really how you're going to get to know what I'm talking about. Okay. And the reason I put the picture, if anyone recognizes that, that is one of the pictures from the Inside Out movie. And the main reason I put that is because that movie has been kind of used as the kind of poster to explain IFS. The main difference is that when we talk about, which I'll get into, parts for IFS, they aren't necessarily emotions like they are in the movie. They could be whatever. So that's the main difference. So some basic assumptions of IFS. Some of them I kind of cut them down a little bit, but the first one I didn't. So it is that it's the nature of the mind to be subdivided into an indeterminate number of subpersonalities or parts. So how I take that in is the mind is meant to be multiple, right? And how I explain that to people is I can feel sad and angry and happy kind of all at the same time. Something will be, I can't think of the word right now, but so that's what we use. And we use the word parts. So I kind of introduced that to people pretty quickly. The next one is that everyone has a self. How the self is kind of defined is it's the essence of who we are as a person. And that tends to be a wise, compassionate leader. And depending on what a person connects with, it's kind of like a parental figure, one that's there to support and just be there and guide the parts that we have. Next one is all parts have positive intent, meaning, as we'll talk about, some parts are not going to do things that we like. And I'm sure you can all think of examples of that, of parts of yourself that like, I wish I wasn't so anxious all the time, or why do I got to freak out? Or why do I do this? Why do I do that? But we learn in IFS that they all are there for a reason and we need them for something. That doesn't mean that they may not be stuck in a time that maybe we don't need them, but they may not know that, and that's part of the work. Next is that systems theory applies due to the nature of parts. So a lot of us, and I know there's some non-therapists in here, but systems theory is pretty much that we acknowledge that, we're not living life in a vacuum and that everything is affecting us. The outside world, the society, overall, our families, whatever, they all affect us. But then we have internal things, if we have any physical illnesses or just emotional struggles, they are also going to affect us. So IFS, it feels like it's kind of a little system, but we're within the big system. And that leads into the internal and external systems affect each other. And actually, when in IFS, they define parts, or they say like they're burdened. And pretty much what that means is it acknowledges that our parts, when something happens in the outside world, whether that's COVID or whether that's a relationship with a parent or something that we've had, a part can take that on. And that then leads it to have certain beliefs or symptoms that can happen. And then that's the job of IFS, is to help us to unburden those parts and help them to maybe get somewhere that they'd rather be. So I gave this one, they have a little bit more of a detailed version of this where it actually explains what each of these are a little bit. But that one was just really blurry and it would have been a lot to try to force you to read that off there. So this is what I was explaining. The self is in the middle. And so the self is the kind of the core of everything. And then we have the three on the outside, which are all different types of parts that we discuss. So we have the manager and the firefighter, which are what we're going to call protectors. And then we have the exiles. The exiles are the ones that really hold all the pain. They're the ones that, let's say we're talking to somebody and we get a rejection or something, then all of a sudden the tears start flowing and, you know, it just hit us in that spot. Those are usually the exiles. So examples that they give will be like sensitivity, anger, dependency, innocence, spontaneity, openness. I don't necessarily like the anger one. You know, I kind of flow with some of those, but those are just examples that they give of what those can look like. The managers and the firefighters are pretty much the same thing. They both have a protective function. It's just when is it coming up? And as you could probably tell by the names that there's a little bit of a hint, but a manager is more of the preemptive. They're like, oh no, I've been down, I know where this is going to lead. I'm not even gonna allow us to get there. So like, for example, some attachment folks that may be in here, an example of that could be more of like the avoidance style. Like, oh no, I know what's about to happen here. I'm not even gonna allow an opportunity for it to happen. And so like a quote they give is like, never again. Examples of what that could look like would be like controlling, analyzing, criticizing, judging, caretaking, pessimism, planning, and numbing. So these are the ones that we'll see a lot of the time. The firefighters, on the other hand, as described by the name, they're the ones that put out the fire. The managers aren't going to be successful all the time. And if they fail in some way and an exile maybe pops up, we're going to freak out, right? There's going to be a lot of stuff coming up. And so that firefighter is then there to put out that fire. A quote that they'll say is like, oh, when all else fails, this is what I'm going to do. And these are the ones that we do tend to struggle with a lot, and we don't tend to like them very much. And examples of that could be like abusing substances, suicide attempts, disordered eating, overspending, having affairs, dissociating, distracting, or any other kind of self-harm behaviors. So, you know, when I was working in a residential for eating disorders, this is why I was trying to do this work with them, because these were their firefighter behaviors. I am so uncomfortable and with whatever is going on, you know, on in the outside world or internally, that I'm going to, you know, I'm going to not eat, or I'm going to purge after eating because I can't manage what's happening for me after I ate. And so it was kind of helping them to douse those a little bit. Okay. So this is just for your information. So IFS has been evidence-based since around 2015. And so this is the quote that they put in the NREPP, which is, I guess, the one that actually makes claims that things are evidence-based. And as you can see, it's for phobias, panic, generalized anxiety, physical health conditions, personal resilience, self-concept, depression, and other depressive symptoms. And then, you know, with the panic and PTSD, there's a lot of studies in there as well. But I think this also brings up a good point, is I've also used this for a lot of physical symptoms. I've had people who have had physical pain who doctors are like, there's no reason, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, of course, you know, that's a little bit of a sensitive topic, because we know, you know, in our medical field, there are also many that don't get diagnosed correctly. But it's also just an acknowledgement that we do hold physical symptoms in our body. And so that has been one way I've used that. And then within my realm, I've used that for some sex therapy clients who are, you know, just having some sort of sexual dysfunction, which, you know, we can go from it from that perspective, or also from the depression perspective that may be affecting it. And that's been pretty useful. I've done it also with like kind of pelvic pain or pain during sex. I've had clients that have had that as well. But honestly, that's part of the reason I do like IFS, is because it's kind of an all-encompassing, and it's kind of like a way of being. I wrote an article for Emily about this, but that one is more talking about my personal experience instead of being a little bit more educational. And I do that because it kind of explains how it's a little bit less of a quick fix and more of a way of being in life. And that's how I've got it, because when I first started learning this, it really just, I was like, this is weird. I'm not a meditative person. I don't know what this is all about. So I really didn't care for it very much. But then I experienced it and I was like, oh my God, I saw change pretty quickly. And I mean, I've seen multiple therapists for years now, and I haven't really gotten much out of it yet. I've got the traditional, the feeling of being cared about or something like that. But when it comes to like, I actually wanted to see change, or I could tell that things were going different, or just by seeing my outside life and have things change there. Did this situation go differently than it did before? I saw a little bit more change when I was using this as a client. The last page is just more for you to have. So I could do the experiential really quick. They have the IFS Institute. They're the one that pretty much govern everything. And I included one of the books that is more of the Internal Family System, second edition one. That's a little bit more of an educational book, whereas You're the One You've Been Waiting For, that's a little bit more therapy like related. It's kind of more of like a self-help kind of thing. And then the OC Camps Mindfulness Clinical Focus Group, I'm sure Ryan will be happy I mentioned that. That's a clinical focus group I started running, where I do include IFS in that. But any other mindfulness-based practices, somatic experiencing, EMDR, anyone that's interested in those kind of things, you can feel free to reach out to me if you want to participate. I know I'm definitely trying to, we've been having a little bit of a slow start, but I'm trying to definitely at least get it kind of going back full swing in the new year. And then there's just my information. But I wanted to do the experiential. I can kind of leave that up for you. And so I just wanted everybody, actually, can I just do a time check real quick? Do you know how long? I don't know where I'm at right now.
I'm sorry, I can't minimize my screen to check my agenda.
You're good. So it's 10:02 and we can go until, let's see, 10:15.
Okay, I'll just go back to the regular one then.
Actually 10:10 and then 5 minutes for Q&A.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna have everybody, and I'm not too particular about what this looks like for each person. Some people will say, oh, you can have your feet on the ground, you can have, you're kind of well planted. I don't tend to push people with that. Find a position that's comfortable for you. Usually people will do eyes closed, but if that's something that you're not comfortable with, you are not required to do that. So feel free to modify as needed. So I just want you to start getting comfortable. Start bringing your awareness inward. If you need to start outward, that's totally fine. Hearing any sounds that may be in your environment. It's pretty quiet where I apologize if my cats come in. They love to be known. That may happen. But just start to bring your attention inward. You can bring it to your breath. In through the nose, out the mouth. I love to actually imagine and visualize the air. And I kind of see it almost like this swirly colored thing, like used to be in those little rubber balls. And I kind of imagining it going in my nose, down in the lungs, swirling around a little bit, and then coming out. But then feel free to move your attention to other places around your body. Noticing any sensations. You can notice any thoughts that pop up. And just allow your attention to wander where it needs to go. And eventually, we're going to stop somewhere. And I want you to see where it stops. And try not to have any judgment about what it is. I know if it's a tummy grumble, it'll be like, oh, I didn't eat breakfast yet. But just go with it and just see that it may make sense in the end. And when you feel like your attention has stopped somewhere, just sit with it for a second. Notice it. Okay. Now I want you to ask yourself, what does it feel like? More like physical sensations. Where is it? Is it a tingling? Is it a heaviness or a tightness? What are you noticing? And now we get to the fun stuff of what if it had a color? Or what if it had an image? What would it look like? It could be a person. It could be an inanimate object. I've had people that saw Looney Tune characters. Just whatever it presents as. And notice all the details. And notice how it feels that you're there. Just in case anyone's are feeling a little too strong, how I kind of guide people with that is the stepping back technique, which is just imagine a little bit of space between you. You are in control and you can do whatever you need to do to get to a place that you feel comfortable to spend time with that part. Just stay there for a second, noticing how it is to be there with it. You can play around with the distance. You can just feel how it is to sit there with it. If you feel like you know what it may need from you, it could need you to give it a hug, could need you just to play a game, or even just sit in silence. Just do whatever feels right for you. Okay. So you're going to be there for a couple more seconds. But what I like to do at the end is we want to show appreciation that they showed up. Because especially for some of our parts, that can be a really scary thing. And there will be some that we work with for a little while. But I like to imagine it almost like I can feel the emanating from my heart and I feel it get encompassed in that. Or it can be whatever way that you show it appreciation that it gave you that experience today. And then I want you to ask it if it feels like it's okay with you leaving, because we have to, but what it may need from you, whether it's to do a certain thing or check in at a particular time, because they're kind of like kids in a way. You know, they don't like to be abandoned. They don't know always when the next time you're going to come around is. And so they tend to sometimes get a little excited. But just see what they may need and see what you can commit to. Don't overcommit, but just see what least you can do. And when you feel like you've shown it enough caring and you've made that agreement, whatever it looks like, you can say your goodbyes and just gradually start to bring your attention back to the rest of your body, to your thoughts, and eventually back to the outside world. That's it.
Oh my gosh, Jodie, that was so moving on so many levels. I just want to open this up. If anyone has questions or anything you want to share about what that was like, if Jodie can answer any questions. Oh, wow.
It's strong, but it's kind of trippy, but it's also enjoyable.
I can share. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. That was amazing. It feels good to be on this side, the receiving end of that. I wanted to mention that in my internship, as I mentioned before, I worked with a lot of women, and then found myself working with teenagers that had a lot of suicide thoughts and suicide ideation. And this was one of the techniques I used. And I found that it was so beneficial and it was so linked between parent and child when we did this together in session. Like they found that they mirrored each other in the feelings, the images they saw, and the progress. So it was super cool to experience that. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I've used it with some pretty high risk clients, suicidal clients, or I remember when I was in grad school, there was a client who would hear voices, and I would kind of like get into it with the psychiatrist that time. Not that I recommend that, but I would kind of get into it with psychiatrist because, you know, he's some older guy and he's like, we just ignore the voices. And I'm like, because clearly that's working. Like, you know, how is she doing with that? Not well. Like, so why are we continuing to do that? It didn't matter, you know, if it was real to me, it was real to them. And that client actually, she would come in and it was like she had like almost like Pokemon cards of like all her parts, and she got like really into it. So it was nice. But
Jodie, I wanted to tell you, like, that was incredible. Thank you so much. Even though I was having to kind of pop in and make sure there's no like things going on in the background, I was still able to really just dip in, and this piggybacked so nicely to my therapy session yesterday, my own personal therapy session, where it was like, oh, that was really deep and incredible. So I just want to thank you so much. And I know you're presenting, so you're not reading comments, but a lot of people are writing in the chat, like how beautiful that was. It was so great, tension dissolving. Thank you. So a lot of feedback too. I was curious to ask a question about like how many parts, like what's the biggest range of how many parts you've worked with people, or how to keep track of people's different parts. Just a thought on that. Curious your thoughts on it.
well, main way that I try to track is I'm also closing my eyes and being there with them. So that definitely helps, because then I'm not getting distracted by the cars going by or whatever it was, because it will be hard. But I will check in with them I don't know what the most amount of parts I would have, but I would say one of the most difficult ones I had was I had a client where every single part had her name. So I was like, come on, like just let's say her name's Jessica. I'm like, okay, it's Jessica 1, Jessica 2, Jessica 5. I'm just like, dude, it was so hard to track when she was doing that. And I was like, her part's probably doing that on purpose as a protective thing. Be like, no, I'm throwing you off. Like you're not getting in here. Yeah, I take notes sometimes too. Like I won't necessarily include that in my my psychotherapy note or like the actual note, but I'll do it in like the sub one. And so I'll just write, okay, this is the name of it. This is how it physically presents. What is, we didn't get to experience that, but then, you go into like, what's their job for the system? When they started doing that, you'll ask, what age they are. And that's usually what will happen with trauma is you'll ask the part how old it is. It'll usually be some younger age. Sometimes I've had older, but usually younger, because they're, like our beliefs with trauma, they're getting stuck where that trauma happened. And then also we'll ask them how old they think that we are, which is usually not. And then like that awesome experience, like, look, you missed all this stuff. You just missed all that. I'm not that person anymore. And that's a really fun activity, but yeah.
Question, what would you call that you just did? Is it like a meditation? What do you call it?
Yeah, I think a lot of them called it like a guided meditation or something. For the most part, yeah.
And it was a specific part of us that we were talking to?
Yes, so there's a part most likely they're protective parts because you kind of have to dig a little bit to get to any kind of exiles. And so those are usually ones that, have some kind of job for us. That doesn't mean necessarily they're doing it for that reason. Hopefully, none of those ones really came up. But I know you can find other ones similar to that because I'll send some of my clients those as well by Dick Schwartz, who's the guy who developed the model. I've seen ones where he'll do it at a conference or something and he'll have the entire room doing it. So, and that's kind of what I like too, is I can have clients do that type of stuff at home, but I'll teach them kind of what I mentioned in the meditation about the stepping back technique, which is the main safety protocol. One, you don't ever go further than you're ready to. And you have to make sure you're kind of in self energy, meaning you're not hating the part or you're not like, just hurry up and go away. But you want to be there with it. But like, if there's something else coming up, I'll tell them to do that in session, but they can just sit there like everyone was doing with a part, and that's totally fine. Yeah. You should really do it.
Hey, Jodie. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. How long would it take typically to unburden an infant part? So the one that you've had for the longest time.
It really depends on I would say the main hurdle with unburdening is your current environment is a big factor because our parts are doing it for a reason. If there's no reason for them to be doing it anymore and they're just stuck there, then the process would move a lot quicker rather than if it's one where like it's, we're being affected by our parents and I need that part every time I come around my parent because I need to be safe. Then those ones will be a little bit harder to get them to do something else. So that's just kind of working with them and trying to figure that out. But it's I wrote in my article, like that's how I felt that this was a model that I liked, was because this is I'm sure that's a part that I've had for a long time. That one that is, and it's usually the one that'll come up first for people is what the hell is this? What are we doing? I don't know what you're asking me. I don't know what the right answer is. So I don't like this model. And that'll usually be everyone's kind of first, go to. And so I just have them kind of be there with it. But when I was doing the training, and I was being therapized just by another student in the training, I was able to get that part to step back enough to let me just trust the process. That didn't mean I'd never question anything again, but it was significant enough of a change right in that one session, which not even long, that I felt the difference. And now I'm more of a like, well, I take what the universe sends me, which that's not usually my vibe. I'm, I'm like always been a chemistry, biology, blah, 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 blah person. So I've never been into kind of more like this type of realm.
Thank you for spending some of your time today with us at Sage Holistic Health and Wellness Center. If you like what we're all about, please consider supporting our nonprofit organization by making a tax-deductible donation. To do this, you can go to our website at www.sagewellnessctr.org and click on Donate in the upper right-hand corner. We look forward to spending some time again with you real soon. Take good care.